welcome to today's Venture Conversation. I'm going to introduce our two friends here in just a second, but at Venture, we really care about marriages. So that is today's topic with my special guests. But I just want to say we care about marriages in a lot of ways. So though you may hear this now or in the weeks or even years to come, it is always relevant for you to check ourventure.church/marriage for what's happening for the support of marriages at Venture Church. And that's everything from care couples and mentors to pre-marriage counseling to a Venture Marriage Conference coming up September 17th, if you happen to catch this while it's live. But I would love to introduce you to my two friends here who are going to share a little bit of what they've learned about marriage over the years. So why don't you guys introduce yourself to begin with?
I'm Rebecca.
I'm Sean. We are Sean and Rebecca King. We've been married 26 years.
27.
27 years.
Yep, good.
At some point, yeah. 27 years. We have two kids. Blake's 25 and Kennedy is 20.
So just like every marriage, my marriage, your guys' marriage, and every marriage out there, marriages face challenges throughout the years. Whether someone's been married just a year or is early on or has been married for many, many years, marriages face challenges. And a lot of times they fit into these big block categories. So I think it's really cool that we're going to kind of hit what are some major marriage challenges that people face, and you guys will use your own personal how you faced it. And then I'd love to just hear, we'll talk a little bit about how you guys have tackled some of those things and what you would suggest to someone who's listening or watching today. So here we go. Every marriage faces challenges. Challenge number one, I think you titled this relationship, but specifically in the category of when the relationship has incurred damage. So this can be a whole host of things that break trust in a relationship. Anybody out there who's experienced a breach of trust certainly knows how hard it is to recover from that and to rebuild. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about what trust in your guys' marriage has looked like and how you've worked to build that, or whatever direction you'd like to go.
Yeah. Well, I'll start. I think when we got married, we met at Northwest University, which was kind of this bubble of community. I was raised in ministry, and just things always had to look perfect. And there was very little vulnerability, very little, I don't want to say accountability, but like as a pastor, I just don't feel like there was a ton of personal accountability. So I brought an addiction to porn into our marriage. I was addicted to porn in college. This is when I was young, the internet didn't even exist.
Don't date yourself.
I'm dating myself. So I brought, I thought, okay, once I graduate college, I'll be free of this. Once I get married, I'll be free of this. Once I get into full-time ministry, I'll be free of this. But just that mental, that addiction, and Rebecca was really clueless, I think.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, I knew, you would come home with something random. You'd be gone and be like, oh, look, I printed this parrot for you. And I'd be like, why? Well, he was at his office looking at porn.
Yeah. So there was just, I think with any habitual lying, you tend to just keep covering up over your tracks. And, that just built itself up into a really ugly lie that kind of culminated in this massive crash. And that was the beginning of healing, actually. Is that instead of lying, I needed to be completely transparent, and there was no sense lying anymore. There was I was embarrassed, I was broken, and I just remember, because we were in full-time ministry, and I just remember when the church asked us to step down, I just remember crumbling to the floor, and you crumbling on top of me, and Blake was like 2 years old, and we just sat there in a ball of tears, just crying. And it was just really, really low. And so then it was, okay, how do we deal with this broken trust? And
Which that is applicable in so many categories. So your specific category is one of many ways trust can be broken in a relationship.
yeah,
And I think that's important for somebody to hear, because I don't want someone to turn off and go, well, that's not my issue.
yeah,
The issue is maybe not even the most relevant part. It's the trust. And so
Yes.
I would love to hear from you, Rebecca, what it was like to look forward when your trust has been broken.
Well, it was pretty ugly for a long time. I was angry. I grew up with this irrational belief that because I had married a Christian man, my marriage would be perfect. Like, we wouldn't have problems because we're Christians and
We did it right.
yeah, we did it right. And so I don't have to worry about that. So I think that was kind of my first disappointment, was like, wait a second. Why? How did this happen? This can't happen. We're Christians. Everything's perfect with us. And then I was just really angry at Sean because I would have never done such a thing. I would never struggle with such a thing. You know, I was really, you know, on this high horse of that could have never been me. It shouldn't have been you. Why did you do this? Like, I would have never done that. You shouldn't have either. And honestly, it was, I would say, at least a year of just anger and allowing myself to be angry. I was done living in that Christian bubble of, oh, everything's fine, we're good. And I can remember we were in a Sunday school class, and I tell the story all the time, but it just shows where I was. And it was a marriage Sunday school class, and our leaders wanted us to compliment our spouse. They're like, that's something good to do. So we went around the room, and everybody paid a compliment back and forth to their spouse, and it got to me, and I said, I'm gonna have to pass, because I had nothing to give him. I couldn't even say he sings well. Like, I was like, I got nothing, and I didn't care. I was in church, and I looked like a horrible person, but I didn't care. I had nothing to give. So it took, it was just time. We were in counseling, and people offering to send us to marriage conferences, and I was like, I'm not there. I don't want to right now. I don't want to really repair this, and it really was finally, I remember a day just crying out to the Lord and saying, I'm tired of feeling like this. I don't want to be angry anymore. And I felt the Holy Spirit say, this is your choice, Rebecca. You're choosing to continue to feel this way. And not that things instantly got better. It still was a gradual process, but I think that was the beginning of me really forgiving, instead of just saying I forgive you, but actually really forgiving and doing the work to help restore.
So I
our
hear a couple of
relationship.
great things in there. One of them is, it sounds like you didn't make a final decision right away. So,
Right.
because you were still in it. You might not have been
Yeah.
ready for a marriage
Yes.
conference, but you were still married.
Yeah.
So you were still in it. So I think that's the freedom for someone to say there's no set time limit to this. And I think that's another big one I hear, is that you gave yourself time, which meant Sean had to be patient
Yeah.
with you
Yep.
taking the time. And I think where you are now is clearly a testimony to the fact that you guys were willing to do the hard work.
Yeah.
So that's I didn't know that. That's really cool. So what are some things that you think, either of you, helped rebuild trust?
Well, I think one thing for me was just seeing Sean's willingness to go through the steps of the whole process of rebuilding our relationship, or what was it called?
Restoration.
Yeah, the restoration process. He was willing to do
Right.
everything. And me seeing that, and just watching him, I was just gradually,
Yeah.
slowly, little by little, regaining. However I say that.
Yeah.
Trust was being regained.
Yes.
What do you think?
So you probably felt like, oh, I have to earn her trust, but this is a mutual relationship. So where were you at in this this time period?
Well, I was really embarrassed. As a leader, I was embarrassed. I was also just mortified at the gravity of my pain that I caused Rebecca, because there was no doubt that I loved her deeply, and the decisions. I mean, truly, I just felt like I need to be the person that she thought I always was.
That is so good.
And so it was just steps of submission, submitting to my pastor, submitting to my counselor. Those moments where, you know, I wanted to be close with Rebecca. That love and that intimacy, the desire for intimacy, didn't go away.
Yeah.
But it was
Gone.
gone. That just wasn't there. And then, as a person that was addicted to pornography, that made it even harder.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was not only cold turkey me by myself, it was cold turkey with my wife.
Yeah.
But that's what I needed, and it was really a time where I had to invest in my relationship with Jesus and let him completely reframe my identity of who I was.
Yeah. Well, and this is just a chapter in your story. It's not your whole story. I
Right.
know you guys would say that too.
Yeah.
But how it has impacted your whole story is things like humility, like the willingness to even talk about this with whoever strangers are going to hear it, but the willingness to share it in hopes that it will help somebody else, I think is
Right.
really cool. So that humility, honesty, and those are obviously things you could see developing in him too.
Right.
Rather than, I can get away with this, suddenly you see this broken, this is not, I don't want to live my life by myself, I want you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yep.
Good. All right, so challenge number 1, which we have not exhausted because each one of these could be many
Right.
hours.
Yep.
But that's a big challenge for people is broken trust or something that harms the relationship itself. Number 2, many people face health challenges. And honestly, many marriages face multiple health challenges. But there are quite a few people that face a major health challenge. And when we say our vows and we say in sickness and in health, we don't actually know what sicknesses could possibly mean. And it could be life altering in many ways. So why don't you tell a little bit about your health journey, or at least the major part of your health story? That came into play right afterwards, right?
Very close.
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
1-2 punch?
Yeah, a few years later, when I was 31, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. I found it early, so that was good, but it was the most aggressive type. And I lost my mom to ovarian cancer. She also had breast cancer. So for me, the diagnosis meant death. And that was really a challenge, I
And
think.
age 31.
31. Our kids were 2 and 7
Yeah.
at the time. I don't know.
So how did so you get this diagnosis. You obviously chose a treatment plan of some sort.
Yes.
And that is a ripple effect on small children, a husband, working, like taking care of a household, all of those things, which
Yeah.
many people can relate to. So what did that look like right after all of that? The dominoes started falling.
Well, I remember you were able to work from home, and that was huge.
Yeah, this was pre-COVID, where everybody works from home.
Right.
I was in an industry that, you went to the office every day, and the owner of the agency, of the business, said, Sean, your family's first, and take care of your wife, take all the time that you need. And,
That's awesome.
sidebar, it was one of the most successful years I had ever had in business, even though I was out of the office.
Oh, wow.
Like 2 days out of every week. It was kind of like the Chick-fil-A story where you just don't open on Sundays and you're still more profitable than
Right,
everybody else.
right.
It was crazy. And I remember when Rebecca found the lump, I remember it was eerily familiar. Like the day that I crumbled to the floor and cried, she was in the bed crying and I crumbled on her and we just wept. I mean, once again, it was just one of these devastating moments, and our initial thought was this is the beginning of the end. But I think those feelings were quickly overtaken by a determination
Yeah.
to fight, a determination to keep our trust in Jesus. He had seen us through this really hard time, and having the blessing of my boss to take the time that I need, I took him at that. And I went to every office, every doctor's visit, every chemo, every surgery, and it ended up being very enjoyable. I mean, it's trying as trying as that was the time. It was so
That's like when a woman has a baby and a man says, "I'm sorry that was uncomfortable for you."
we just had we had so many dates every week, and it stunk.
So
It was-
you mean, I think we all know you
Yeah.
mean how close you were beside each other.
and
Yeah.
the opportunity for me to now stand by her
Yeah.
the way she stood by me. And I think that's with any
beautiful.
marriage is the opportunity, no matter who's struggling, is to just be committed to it.
Right.
And I don't know. We spoke at a conference once about, stepping back from ministry and the whole thing with porn, because porn is a big deal. And Rebecca said, I wouldn't trade it because of where we are today.
Yeah.
And to hear you say that was huge. And even though cancer was terrible, I would say the same thing. It was an amazing gift for me to be able to stand by you the way you stood by me.
You want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say too, it was just such a time of God just proving his faithfulness over and over again. I mean, I have so many little stories I could tell, which I won't take the time to do, but I mean, God was just so faithful to us. And I think because our relationship was in a healthy place, like Sean said, I don't think treatment was fun, but
Right.
reconstruction was fun. Like, we had a lot of fun during that process. But the other thing too is our church family really came around us and lifted us up in prayer and encouraged us in knowing that we had people all over the country praying for us, and we felt those prayers. And I think it's just really important to establish that, like to find your tribe at church and your
that's good.
your Christian friends that will support and pray for you during those times.
Yeah.
Super helpful.
Because even though your story is very personal to you guys, these stories are everywhere.
Yep.
Families all over the place they face health crises. It's part of life oftentimes. So how you face it and how you work together, I think, is the beauty of your guys' story, that you were fully in this together to fight
Yeah.
together. And I knew you then, so I can attest to that because
Yeah.
I remember how you stood by each other and fought together, and your kids watched that,
Yeah.
and your friends watched that, and your family watched that. So
Well, and seeing and reminding each other of the little miracles along the way.
Yeah.
Like the doctors that we were guided to. It was just like, wow, how did we get connected with that person? Or like insurance things that went sideways, and then all of a sudden God would make a way and something would get corrected, and just, I don't know, reminding each other of those miracles. So for anybody that's facing health challenges is
Yeah.
to somehow, when one is down, the other needs to be strong.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
we...
Which doesn't mean you can't have a bad day.
Totally.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Because I'm sure
For
there were
sure.
many.
Yes.
But
Yes.
yeah, I do agree. I think that is one of the beauties of a marriage is
Right.
when one is weak, the other can be strong. And
Yeah.
that's a powerful combination to take them both down. So,
Right. Yep.
As much as I would love to keep talking about both of these topics, the third one, and I think, again, many people will relate to this, is the big category of finances. And finances can be the biggest stress on a marriage, can be the biggest, cause the biggest fractures in a marriage. So I know you have some experience in facing financial distress as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, our financial story is almost humorous. We made a commitment. We made a commitment years ago to be a one-income household. And even in ministry, I mean, you remember our first paychecks as youth pastors was like
$911.
$911 was my paycheck. And
Twice a month.
And
Twice
rent
a
was
month.
500 or
yeah,
something.
yeah. And I remember there were days where Rebecca would call me on my flip phone, and
You had a flip phone?
I did. It was fat though. It was a Motorola. And she would say, "Do we have money so I can walk to the store?" Because we had one car, and buy bread and milk. And there were days where I would say, we don't have that. I mean, that is really, really hard. Leaving the ministry, even though it was $1,800 a month, it was all we had. And I found myself in the unemployment line to find a job, doing door-to-door sales, which was really, really hard. And just staying with that. So we were broke. We were living on credit. And then God would make a way. And we always paid our bills. But then as my career progressed, we had bought a house. And the market was going crazy. I don't remember when that was. But housing market was just going crazy. And so we were going to add on to our house and then refinance it and pay it off and have like all this equity. Well, we finished the house and then we were doing all the finishing touches, put a big deck on it, and we spent like $50,000 on credit. And then the housing market crashed. And we were stuck with 50 grand in credit debt on one income. And there were so many pressures. And in business, I would have these windfall paychecks. We're like, holy cow, I just got this massive amount of money. And Rebecca would say, what are we going to do? And I'd say, we're paying off debt.
Yeah.
And that was such a terrible feeling to have.
I would not say, what are we going to do? I knew what we were
right?
going to do.
What are we going to spend the
I
money
would
on?
say, too bad we have to pay this, because imagine what we could do.
Right,
true.
Not,
right.
what are we going to do?
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Right. So just having that slavery of debt
Yeah.
was so hard.
Yeah.
And you know what? Life went on. Business was good. And then I had a really, really terrible business experience where I was at the top of my game. We were making good money, doing ministry on the side. So life was just pretty sweet. And then I won't go into gory details, but I was one of the owners of my business, and I was fired as one of the owners of my own business. And my income went down like 70%. So we were living on 30% with all the same obligations. So praise
Right.
God, the debt was gone. So we were disciplined in that. But there was a lot of bitterness. There was a lot of resentment and just financial
Toward the company.
toward the company and the individuals that had done that. And so that put financial strain on us, but I think we have faced so many
Yeah.
hard things in our life, and we had seen God move in so many crazy ways, miraculous ways, that we just trusted.
Yeah.
And like we're in this generosity series at church, there was never a time where we gave up on being faithful to the Lord.
Right.
Tithe was always, that was just the given.
Yeah.
That was God's money. And God just continued to be faithful, which was just, it's not surprising.
Yeah.
You could say, oh, it was such a surprise, but it really wasn't. We just knew God was going to make a way. And
It's so not fun living it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's so awesome to look back.
Absolutely.
And so this is what we do. We look back and we go, oh, remember when we were living out of the food bank and then like
Yeah.
this thing of groceries showed up on our front porch and it had diapers in it and that's the only way we've kept diapers on children. Ha,
Those
ha, ha.
stories,
But
right.
living it was so stressful. And then I always followed up with, I don't ever want to do that again.
right.
Yeah.
But the ability to be able to reflect back and see, because we build a little bit of God's character in there while we're building the character of like, this is who we are in a marriage. This is
Yeah.
what we believe. This is what we fight for. And this is the God that we serve. And you build this character of your marriage and of your God that is a testimony to everyone else and informs every decision you make from here on out, which of course does not mean any of us are perfect. But
Right.
it does help you when you face something difficult. Doesn't mean it's not as difficult. It just means there's a inner peace that comes with that we're not fighting this by ourselves.
Right.
Which I attest to by watching you guys over the years and knowing some of your story and living some of that myself, knowing that people out there are facing things that could tear them apart or could make them
Right.
stronger. And Kelly Clarkson said it best. Doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. Anything else you guys want to throw in there? Final thoughts?
I just want to say regarding the financial thing, for me, I remember one of the most important things was us trusting God and modeling that to our kids, because our kids were older, and our son, who's very business minded.
Yeah.
I just remember having a conversation with Sean and saying, Blake's going to be watching us.
Yeah.
And,
So good.
we just have to trust in God, and this is our opportunity to really model that to our kids.
Yeah, and looking back over 27 years, you can see all those things. But when you're in year 1 or year 5 of your marriage and you're facing those things, they're so real and the hills are so daunting.
Yes.
That being a part of a church is so important because you can lean on, a lot of us can lean on our parents, but even that relationship isn't the same as having people in the church that are ahead of you, that have gone through the same experiences, and we can encourage people
Right.
to stick with it. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Don't take it out on each
In case we
other.
haven't covered it, marriage is also hard.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Anything worth having is hard work.
Yes.
And anything left to itself will tend to fall apart. So it takes intentional work too.
Yep.
One of the things we like to do in these conversations is leave people with a final challenge or a question to wrestle with, or like, what would be your parting? Let us leave you with this to resonate inside of you. Anything you want to throw in there?
I mentioned this at lunch just today, but the Bible says that when we get married, we become one flesh. And when one body member is hurting or struggling in some way, eventually that is going to be known by the entire body. So like hiding, being dishonest, being untrustworthy, while it feels like you might be getting away with it, and that's probably never someone's intention.
Right.
But just having the ability to have trust and honesty is so important. 'Cause
So
without
if
it,
we
it just-
direct that as a challenge, do I
yeah.
hear you saying, like, where are you struggling that you need help, that you have not yet admitted you need some help?
Yeah, and
Or
it doesn't have to be something
encouragement.
that's, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be anything huge.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be just an area that you just don't even want to address.
Well, and we've seen that with friends. Like one family member is struggling in how they're spending, and they're hiding that from their spouse,
Sure.
and that all of a sudden becomes something massive.
Yeah.
Just having those honest conversations, like be willing to be vulnerable, and yes, the fear is always what keeps us from being honest.
Uh-huh.
But I think the short-term pain is worth being honest.
So good.
Yeah.
The long-term gain.
The long-term
Short-term
gain.
pain is
Yes.
the
Long-term
Yeah, leave it to the
gain.
kettlebell queen.
That's our sounds like a good tattoo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That got super permanent right there. All right. Well, thank you guys for sharing just a little bit of your story and for your honesty. And hopefully this is encouraging to somebody out there who needed a challenge or a reminder. We're here, but there are many other resources out there as well. But if we can help any of the three of us or any of us here at Venture, we would love to. So thank you for joining us. We're here to help.